Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Culz Interviews. Today we got a fun one and one that I kind of just looked into because I wanted a coffee one day. Went into a Barnes and Noble and they were doing a big local author signing there with like 7, 8 authors, and we met Kathleen there. And so I'm really excited, Kathleen, to have you join the show and really introduce you to our audience. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Keegan.
No, thanks. Thanks for joining. For anyone that doesn't know, you do host a podcast of your own, A Journey of an Awakening Spirit, as well as obviously you were at a bookstore, so you have some books, the Dancing Souls trilogy. Now, growing up, is this kind of where you saw yourself going, or?
Yeah, that's it. No, not quite. No, I didn't even think I would live to be this old. Let's just put it that way. I did not really see my life beyond 30. I was very suicidal when I was younger due to lots of things that happened in my childhood that, I have remembered over the years. But no, I pretty much was on a self-destructive path. I didn't want to live. I didn't like my family's relationship. There was a lot of bad juju in that family dynamic and lots of trauma that went on in the process as well. And when I was 16, I went to an Edgar Casey meditation with my mom, and that's when I did my very first meditation, and I received what I thought was the rod and the staff from who I thought was God at the time. Turned out it was the Archangel Michael. I learned that about 40 years later. And that's what set me on that there was something other than this physical plane that we were on. And that's what started my journey into waking up. And I became a paralegal for about 20 years because I did not know how to speak. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to think or critical think. I didn't know how to do any of that. And working for lawyers really helped me to critical think, kind of see outside the box, learn how to protect myself, because bad things happen. And the value of a lawyer, there is a value there, even though I don't care for lawyers. But there was a lot of good that I learned about it. And I got out of working as a paralegal when the industry started to change. It used to be a very honorable, reputable field to be in. And, as everything else in the world does, it changes, and that changed. And I decided that I was going to start my own business, whatever that was. But I had to get out of the grind.
Yeah, and like you said, things start off with good intentions sometimes, and they can go astray. We've seen it. We talk to people of all different fields, and usually once money's involved, then it can change people. But you had a little bit of awakening, and it's not maybe a straight line progress, right? It's kind of a messy, kind of all over the place type of progress, right?
Oh, totally. Anybody that thinks it's a straight shot uphill, they're absolutely on drugs, because it was always 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, because the awareness on the planet wasn't there when I was growing up, so to speak. And so I was bringing in lots of new information. I was receiving a lot of information at the same time. And so I didn't really understand a lot of anything other than there was something, and I knew I had a big purpose, whatever that was. And I just spent a lifetime learning about it. And then the Archangel Ariel asked me to move to Chicago to write the books Dancing Souls. And what I thought the books were going to be and what they turned out to be, again, 2 different things.
Hey, we talk about Chicago a lot here. Did Chicago itself have influence on the books, or was it people? Like, what changed what you thought they were going to be?
No, going to Chicago was going back to my roots, because I was originally born and raised in Cleveland, so Midwest, and Chicago's very Midwest, where they bring you in, they're your best friends, and they just met you, but they just have open hearts, unlike what we experience here in Colorado. And so I went back to my roots is basically what it felt like being. I just didn't have to go to Cleveland. And there were a lot of people there that were supporting me during this process. And all I did was journal during that period. Every day was a journal for 3 years. And I kept thinking that the books was about awakening, women's healings, sexuality. And it wasn't any of that. I mean, it's all in there, but it wasn't what I thought it would be. It ended up being the journey of an awakening spirit of what our grandmasters went through and becoming enlightened, but you're still a physical human being on the planet. And they said it would be like a journal for people, like a guiding way for people to understand what the waking up process is, because we're still going to deal with our humanness. That never goes away.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are all humans, so we're all gonna have some of those tendencies. As far as like the writing progress process, was that itself healing for you, or more of an awakening or lightning thing for you as you wrote? Like, did it make you realize you knew more than you thought, or?
I became more like an observer. I think that was the biggest part of this writing process, is that I just reflected on every day. In the morning, I would reflect on what happened, because there was a lot of things that happened, because I was living in a vortex in this old farmhouse in Elgin, Illinois, and there was always something going on. And I constantly just, I mean, between the dreams and the things the spirit was asking and doing sound therapy, there was just so much that was constantly going on in the process. And I started to realize, like, the language I used is what was used back then. We didn't have terms of alignment or paradigms or anything like that. It was head trash, and I needed to stop the head trash, because I knew it was the unconscious coming to the surface, looking at that. And all I wanted to do was be a better person, and not for anyone but me, because I was so out of alignment with myself. And I always said, one part of me is over here, the outside is on the left side, as far left as it can go, and the inside was on the far right, and I wanted to bring them together. Now, I did not know the word alignment at that moment in time of what I was saying, but I knew. And so there were times, I mean, this was when you start waking up and you go through your own darkness, and you start finding what the truth is and what's not. And you discover that you're never alone, that spirit is always talking to you, and nature's always talking to you. And those were the things that I was waking up to, of realizing we're never abandoned, even though we think we are. And I also learned that when terror came, and it did come, that if I just breathe through it for 90 seconds, I would be fine. And it always did. So I was learning how to do the things that seem to be commonplace today, but they were not commonplace.
Well, and how did like the power of outlook change like your world? Should, how can we use our power of how we look at the world to help each other?
Right. Well, I had to get off the stage, and I had a friend who was helping me, and he would tell me to get off the stage. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You have to be emotionally involved in all this. And he's like trying to talk to me about the drama, but it took me a while to understand that, because it wormed its way in. And what that meant for me was, whenever I would get so emotionally distraught or overwhelmed or fearful or whatever it was step back, get into the seats, and watch the drama unfold, because drama will always unfold. You're either participating in it or you're watching it. And so I started to watch what was going on around me, which then helped me to gain my power, my voice. I started creating boundaries, because I realized how much we all get hooked into the drama, and we are wired to be in drama. Our brains do this. I've learned since I started my podcast. I've had a lot of pretty profound people on that. I've learned a lot of things about how we operate as humans. And what that did is, I started to see like the atrocities of the world, so like when Jesus was scourged at the pillar and that type of thing, I was seeing things like that in our world, the way our world is today. And I couldn't understand how God could love us the way he does, because I knew I couldn't love like that. I mean, because it's like, how do you? So I really worked on getting into that place of my own empowerment. And when I got to that place, and I remember one day I decided I wanted to be happy, and discovered happiness is an inside job, not an outside job. because we always say, well, I'll be happy when I get XYZ. And I noticed that when I decided I was going to be happy, my whole world changed, because all of a sudden it wasn't bad people or people trying to hurt me or scam me. It was kind, loving people were approaching me, and I didn't even know how to handle that in the beginning. So I would just be like, hello, wow, the world's actually nice. And I realized it wasn't nice. I was nice. I wasn't holding everybody at a distance. You know, my arms weren't up keeping people at bay. I was allowing people to come in because I started to realize that I was safe. And if I was in danger, that was whatever I created in my head, not necessarily what was happening in the world around me. Because I don't live in, the ghetto or anything like that.
Well, and you mentioned humans kind of being conditioned for drama and stuff like that. And I was like thinking about it, and TV companies got to know this, because reality TV is like a booming business. So they know that they have that channeled in. Well, so as far as the writing process, kind of going back to the books, how did you do that? As far as like, did you have an overarching plan for, was it always going to be a trilogy? Or like, how did you sit down, and did more and more ideas come to you? Is that why you made it longer as a trilogy, or what happened there?
Well, I hand wrote everything in the beginning, and then I had to I put it on the computer, and I just went through all of it, and it was very difficult, and Spirit told me what they wanted the overall arc to be and anything that related, and I can't tell you what that is today, because, sometimes when they drop a bomb on you, you don't always remember what it is. And it was like anything that related to what they told me they wanted this book that was reflecting that is what I put in the book. And surprisingly enough, I was really surprised how much the editor did not take out of the book. And there was lots of messages that the Archangel was giving me during that process. And it was, I always was told I was going to write a trilogy, but I thought this was one book until I handed the manuscript to Judith Briles. It was not a man. It was like, this is 3 books, sweetheart. And so that's how the book came out into a trilogy, because, this is 3 years of a waking up process. And I mean, we're talking from being in the honeymoon state all the way to the death of my mother. I mean, it was a full gambit of 3 years of daily journaling and things coming off of the text messaging, because there was an overarching story of how this began, because Spirit actually dictated the first part of the story to me, because I had no conscious recollection of it. They just downloaded it, and it was like, really, really, really. So it was a very interesting process. And then how I had to complete all of that in the process.
Well, and you've definitely gotten it out there. How has been the reception as far as like being able to meet people? Have you gotten feedback from, people that have really connected to your work?
Everybody, what's interesting, this is what I found very interesting, is book signings are a very interesting experience. People that are in what these books are about know it immediately, and they start talking to me and they dump everything on me. I mean, it's like there's a no holds bar. Like if they would have talked to you about what they talked to me, you would think they were nuts. Me, I'm like, yeah, I got it. That type of thing. And then I also realized that because it's a metaphysical book in nature, I thought there was a lot more interest in metaphysics, because that's all I ever read when I was, when I started reading. It was all metaphysical because I wanted to understand. And so I remember telling one of the authors there, saying, I came to the conclusion that I'm a very elite type of genre here. And she's like, yeah, think. I mean, because it was so, to me, it was like a revelation, because, everybody wants, historical fiction or romance or, whatever, but it was not me. Every now and then somebody would come in, but the people that have read the books absolutely love the books. They love the books regardless. So it was surprising to me, because I didn't know how it would be received, because this was a very personal story and I was terrified of bringing it out. And I'm glad I did, but it was a lot of years before I really brought the second book out.
Well, like kind of going to the metaphysical portion, you said it's kind of like an elite genre, like people, it's not as big. Have you seen certain towns or areas that maybe connect with it more? Is it more urban or rural? Is it big cities, small cities?
No, because when we did a book signing in Colorado Springs, I thought for sure this is never going to happen. It's Colorado Springs. And those were, I think I found more people in Colorado Springs that were identified to the genre than anywhere else. And I realized I haven't done book signings at metaphysical stores yet, but that is something when I realize that I'm a metaphysical book, I should probably go to the metaphysical stores because it would probably be more receptive than just at Barnes and Noble. But I'm thrilled that I'm in Barnes and Noble, and I've been doing books there, and the stores tell me, your books sell. Even when I'm not there, they still sell. And I promote the books all the time on my show. So I'm excited because where did I go? I went to metaphysical bookstores, or I went to, even though it wasn't Barnes and Noble at the time, I went to conventional bookstores to find the books that I was looking for back in the day, because we didn't have internet back then.
Yeah, the dark ages, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just old enough. I remember those days. Yeah. Well, you speak of different bookstores, man. I think about this a lot. I drive by a couple that used to be at Borders, and it makes me sad because I really love
Yes.
Borders. But what I like about Barnes and Noble recently is they've really tried to make the local authors stand out on the shelves. Like they'll put little signs, local author, and kind of explain it. So I think that really helps, because for me and Sam, we do a lot of local history and we talk to a lot of local people. So I'm always on the lookout for that.
And that's just recent, actually. It's just recent within this March, because I actually asked one of the managers, I said, what do you do with the books after we leave? Because we know that if we sign them, they're not going to return them. And then and we know that they put, signed on it. And she said, well, let me show you what we are doing. And that's when they showed us in the front of the store around customer service, at least in the one, was a shelf of just local Colorado authors. And every store I've been in since then is doing the same thing. So this is something that just came down from corporate. So that's really exciting because they do support Colorado authors very much so.
Yeah, it was really neat. There was quite a big turnout of local authors that day. Well, as far as like maybe self-awareness and mindfulness, like how can people cultivate that in themselves? Like, is there any like tips or, things you would recommend for people?
The one thing that I would recommend is be present. Really pay attention to what's going on around you. And if you're feeling something's a little off, sit back and look at it. Or if you're feeling overwhelmed, like something just happened and you're like in a crazy place, just sit down and just breathe through it. Because when we get caught up in our lives, because we're habitual, so we don't always pay attention. We just go through the motions. But to become mindful, you have to actually be present in the moment. And so I would say if you're wanting to do something different, then just be aware. And I think that's what these books taught me, was to be very present all the time. And because of that, then I can see when I get triggered, where a thought comes up, or I want to sabotage myself, or I'm feeling angst about something, I can sit back and just look at it and look at, well, where was I? What was going on? And you pay attention to that. And that brings your power back. It brings you back into control of your body, your mind, your spirit. It brings you back into total control. And that would be one thing. And journaling is another really great way to be present, because you're talking about your feelings when you're writing. Like you're noticing something and you feel it. And a lot of times you get a lot of inspiration and insight when you do that. So those would be my two biggest recommendations of being mindful.
Yeah, and I think it's good tips. The world we live in is a crazy world, so the more we can help each other out, it's a good thing. What are some maybe misconceptions you've been able to bring to light or show that they are with spirituality or metaphysical topics?
I think a lot of times people think doing work on themselves is like a metaphysical, or it's, it's like, because we have such negative opinions of ourselves because somehow we're wired or trained or something. I haven't quite figured out why we go down the negative path instead of the positive path. And I think that's part of the way our brain is wired, because the way our brain's wired, I mean, we make stuff up. I mean, I always used to say I have an MSU degree, which is make shut up. But we're wired to do that. We always create stories, like what you were saying about reality and TV. We're always creating stories and we're putting ourselves in the middle of it. But a lot of times it's not about us. And I think people don't realize that our world is our world. Your world is your world. And then we intersect in the world. And then we make up a story about that intersection. Doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, good or bad. It's we make up a story. So I think when people start realizing that if something's happening or somebody's you're doing this to me. No, they're not doing it. You're thinking they're doing it. They're in another world someplace doing their own thing. It's the story we make up. And I think once I started to realize that, when I was, especially in Chicago, I had so many opportunities to see things like this of, a friend of mine comes over for dinner and he's in a pissy mood. And I'm like, excuse me, but I don't know what this is about, but it's not about me. So you either check yourself or leave, instead of starting a fight, because people do that for drama. And I think that was one of the main things, is realizing that that's not necessarily, it's a spiritual evolution, but it's also a human evolution. When we quit making everything about us and realize that there's other people in the world besides us, that's when the world's going to flip.
As people are going down their journey, it might not always be comfortable. Like, how can discomfort actually help people grow?
It's in the discomfort that you actually grow, because like I said, the unconscious parts of our programming that we learned as children that we didn't know how to rationalize because we were too young, we were emotional sponges. So we took everything in and we put it in a file cabinet in our brain. And when a similar situation shows up, it says, oh, good, we can learn about this now. Let's go down this road so we can get back into homeostasis, so to speak, instead of carrying this weight. And now it sucks to be you when those days happen, trust me. But it's also in that where you get to look at, okay, what's similar to what happened in my past that's bringing this up? Sometimes somebody could say something could be like a deja vu experience. It could be lots of different things, but now we get to look at as an adult and not as a little kid and start rationalizing, okay, well, this happened and it was because I didn't have any tools in my toolbox. I didn't know anything. I was just absorbing. So what we do is that at that point, we start rewriting our story. That's powerful.
Yeah, very much so. And, today's world is so fast paced, that's why fast food has grown, because people just don't have time. What are maybe some tips that people can do to help themselves slow down so they can actually hear their inner voice?
Morning rituals. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is if you have to get up a half an hour early just to spend time with yourself, to write gratitude. What do you want to accomplish today? How do you want to feel? Paying attention to being happy. Where are you on the happy scale? And then if you go off it because you in road rage, well, what can you do to get back into that happy place? And I think when you start slowing down and doing that, you start realizing that all the things we think is important really isn't important. And I think I've slowed down considerably. I think sometimes I feel like I could die because I feel like I've slowed down so much. But I also feel like I'm in control of my life. I'm in control of everything. And then when I do go out in the world and experience whatever, I'm in a better place, because now I'm not in the drama of it. I'm observing it, and I can do the things that I need to do where I feel like I'm fully present. So when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm in your space having a conversation with you. and I don't have all the head trash going on, or I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. Because people feel that when you're in a rush state. And it's like, well, why do you even care? Because people are really wanting to be seen, heard, and valued. I think that's probably the three biggest things that this world wants right now. And nobody's giving it to them because they can't even stop long enough to listen to themselves, see themselves, and hear themselves.
Right. Yeah, it's really hard anymore to give that voice out. That's something me and Sam have really tried with our show is just interact and talk with other people and let their voices, go to different people that they might not be able to usually. It's something that's helped us out. We've made many friends in different uh, places that have took our journeys in vastly different ways than we would have thought. You did talk about rituals, and I know a lot of people are like into like meditation and yoga. Are those some rituals that might be helping people right now?
Oh, yeah, those definitely would help just because it's a meditative state, but, writing gratitude, write down 3 things you're grateful for. That type of thing is also huge. Movement, like, I have to get back into it, but I discovered that when I started walking, how much everything seemed to just flow, like there was more balance and peace with just having body movement. Because, yes, the other part too is we're not moving our bodies enough. I mean, our minds are racing, but our bodies aren't. And so getting back into a healthier lifestyle, taking the time to eat and focus in instead of being on your phone, put the phones down and have dinner again with your family. As hard as that may be, but because I'm changing the way I'm eating, I'm finding that I'm discovering recipes out there that are easy to make, like in 30 minutes, and they're very good for you, and they're nutritious, and they taste good, and it's like it opens that much more to the family and conversation because we're feeling healthy, we're feeling revitalized. Because we come home and you just, why turn on the TV? Let's just enjoy a meal together and have some conversation. And the best way to do that is when you're having a meal is the best way. I mean, I used to spend hours after dinner with my mom and dad and family when I was younger. And I used to do that when I was, when I had a partner, we would just sit at the table and have conversation. I love that.
Yeah, I remember growing up, we'd go to my great grandmother's house every Sunday, and the family would sit around the table and we'd all kind of just chit chat about whatever was going on that week, be it sports or life or whatever, was on the table. Well, what is you were talking about recipes and you were finding some. What's the favorite one you found recently?
Well, I've discovered the Mediterranean diet, and it's very little carbs, but mainly proteins and fats because I discovered that proteins and fats are doing much better for me. I don't eat a lot of dairy or carbs, but I've noticed that I feel like my gut's better because of it. It's definitely my body's been a little cranky, don't get me wrong, because it's a change. And sometimes the body doesn't like to change, so you just have to work through it. But I mean, I made a couple of really good chicken recipes that I baked chicken with pineapple and broccoli, like I roasted it. Then I made a stir fry. It was a stir fry rice bowl with shrimp and cucumbers and carrots with a sauce. Oh my God. And they look like the pictures on top of it. So not only do they look good, they actually tasted really good. And I had all these ingredients in my kitchen, but I didn't know how to use them. So this is really kind of cool to like have different tastes because when you want to eat and you're hungry, but you don't know what you want and you're tired of the same old foods. And I'm like, I just want to learn different food combinations. And that's what I'm learning with this Mediterranean diet. And I already have all the staples. So this is like way cool. I'm loving it.
Yeah, no, that's great. You were also talking about like just active lifestyles and things people can do. What about like dance? Like dance was big for you in your
Oh
journey?
God, yes. I've always been a dancer, and I got into ballroom dancing, which caused the books to write, and the journey that I'm on was all about ballroom dancing when this 24-year-old dance instructor got into dance position and every chakra lit up all the way up. And I jumped back and said, "What are you doing?" And he just simply looked at me and said, "I'm getting into dance position." I'm like, "That may have been what happened for you, but that is not what happened to this girl." And it was just such a shock because he's like, "What is wrong with you?" But it was what I discovered. There was so much about dance and life that for me. But when I talk to other people that love yoga or riding bikes or golf or whatever, life is a golf game. Well, dance was the game of life for me. And I realized that if I can dance with someone, I can live with someone because that partnership. And I really looked at a lot of stuff about what I thought of men, how I didn't trust men. I mean, there was so much stuff that came up for me about trust issues altogether, and I had to process through it. And I talked to my dance instructor a lot because when you're in those close quarters, I mean, the only thing you're not having is sex pretty much. I mean, because every part of your body's getting touched in one way or another to get your form right. It's how you're dancing, it's the energy, and it's about, to me, it was the melding of a masculine and feminine energy. And then we create our own energy within that, which gives that look of the dancers. And I'm like, this is not easy. It is not about form. It's not about technique. This is about how do you move inside energy. And that was how I interpreted it. And it was to me, but that's what was happening to me was this spiral evolution. And that's why dance definitely is very important to me because I got into jazz and ballet and modern dance and all that when I was younger. It was my form of expression when I couldn't talk.
Yeah, no, dance has been very powerful. We talk sports a lot, and there's a lot of, NFL players that took dance and ballet or stuff like that to really work on their form and stuff like that. Like it can do a lot for people. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I had a trainer and he couldn't believe what I could do at my age. He says, "You know how many people can't do this?" He couldn't do some of the things I could do. And he was so good. I mean, he was a bodybuilder, so he always knew when I couldn't do it anymore. He just watched those muscles. And he said, "Most people can't even do half of this." They said, "Take ballroom dancing." And he's like, "Oh, I can't dance." I said, "You'll learn." I said, "It's not about dance. It's about you get a whole new connection to your bodies in ways," because he showed me muscles I didn't even know were there when he was working me. But I had the strength and the core was so strong in me that he said most people can't do it. And he was always surprised because, he's like, "Oh, I got this old lady here." And is like, "Yeah, I could do wheelies around most 20-year-olds. Okay, give me a break."
Hey, you could definitely do wheelies around me because I am a terrible dancer. So there you go. I also heard you talking about a movie, and we do movie deep dives, so maybe at some point we'll have to have you back on. But the movie was What Dreams May Come,
Oh God. I love
and
that movie.
I've seen it multiple times. Yeah, Robin
That
Williams, I
is
love that one.
so true. That
Yeah.
death, that suicide, that is true. That is a true, true, true experience that you go into this abyss and you do it yourself. And it takes somebody to love you enough to pull you out, or otherwise you're there for a very long time. And I remember the first time I saw that movie and it was like, oh my God, this is the truth. This is absolute truth. And then here's Robin Williams who commits suicide of all people, right? Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
watched that pretty quick after his passing because that's that and Fisher King. There's a couple that really stick out, but that's such a powerful movie, I think.
oh, totally. Because we don't know how to navigate grief a lot of times and we become silent because we struggle with just being there for someone. And I remember when my mom died, most people couldn't handle it. And because to them, I was the Rock of Gibraltar. And if I was falling, then that meant they were way down the mountain. Right. And, and I thought, why is this so hard to just listen? Because they haven't faced a lot of their own stuff yet. Because I always said, when people died, friends of mine that had someone die, I would just be with them. I didn't say anything. I would just be with them and let them speak or not, just be there in that space. And yeah, you feel helpless, but see, it's not about me. It was about them. It was about supporting them. And that's sometimes the only way we know how to support somebody is through just being there. And and I think when you look at that movie about how his wife was just devastated with the loss of his kids, and then he runs into work. This is so typical of what we do, that we forget to talk to our partners and know that they're in pain too, because we're so lost in our own grief. And
Mhm.
I mean, it was but yet when she died, then he's really in it and then wanted to save her. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a powerful movie.
Yeah, for sure. We'll have to have you back on so we can do a better, like, in-depth talk of that movie. Because yeah, I heard you talk about it. I was like, "Oh, I gotta," because I don't hear that one mentioned a lot, so I was excited to hear someone else mention it. I also heard you talking about, like, essential oils and
Mhm.
maybe some herbal remedies, which are big, today. What are some that you really look into or trust?
Well, I actually have an aromatherapy company, so I created a body care line with essential oils, and they were back in 1995, I think it was. No. Yeah, 95 when I created the company, because I was sick and I needed something, and a friend of mine said, lavender is really good for migraines. Is like, yeah, in your dreams it is, and it actually was good. And I did not understand essential oils. I did not understand the body mind connection. I didn't understand any of that, other than I knew that this was an ancient healing modality, and it made you feel good. So I did a lot with essential oils and created them, and my whole life started to change because of it's grace. Um, because of that, and then when CBD came out, I wasn't gonna get involved in it, and yet I created Grandma's Natural Remedies, because what I discovered, and it was purely by accident, when I was making a blend, the CBD was already in, and it goes straight down to the bottom because it's a very heavy, and this was an isolate. It's very heavy, and I put the essential oils in, and for some reason, I put the bottle up and I could see the light, and the CBD was coming up and the essential oils were coming and meeting in the middle and spiraled together. And I realized that CBD and essential oils work really well because they are designed for the body anyways, and we are wired for it. And it was just made CBD more powerful, because when I brought it to market, a lot of people were saying it takes so long for it was THC more than CBD, but it took a long time for people to get pain relief from whatever it was from the marijuana plant. And this, people were saying it was instant relief. It didn't matter if it was an oil or a lotion or whatever it was. It worked on my animals and other animals to help them with stress. So there was a lot of things. I did a lot of research with it. So, and that's what brought me back into wellness too, because, we don't know we're sick until we get well. And
Yeah,
essential
because you get
oils.
so used to it, and then you're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, what have I been missing this whole time?"
Right, and because of the essential oils, when I got into it, I started getting rid of, like, all the toxic chemicals, the cleaning things that we have that were very toxic, and we didn't know they were toxic. But, the more research I said, it was like, well, yeah, this is like in the 40s and 50s, they're giving it to the housewives to kill them, but they're wearing suits and respirators in the 40s in chemical plants. But yet it's okay to give it to a housewife. Okay. Those were things that were just not working for me back then.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, the medical practices were questionable. I know one of the presidents was probably killed by his doctors,
Yeah.
Garfield. Had they just left the bullet in, because they didn't believe in sterilizing, or they didn't know about sterilizing
Yeah.
hands and tools, or they did bloodletting a lot, where they would just
Oh
bleed you,
God. Yes.
and, George Washington dies of that.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah, like you were saying with CBD, it can definitely help. We had a dog, Sophie, who would have seizures, and you'd give her a little bit of CBD, and it would snap her out of it really quickly. It's really amazing, the wonders of that. But as somebody that deals with migraines, and Sam knows this because it actually mid filming last year in Roswell, it flared up. What can I do for lavender? Like what should I be on the lookout for?
If you take lavender, because all you have to do is smell the lavender or essential oil. I mean, you can put it on your temples, but you always want to smell the oils because it's actually going to send the message to the brain immediately for instant relief. But what I've noticed with the essential oils, that when you smell it or do it, it just subtly goes away and you don't remember it was coming on until somebody says, "How's your headache doing?" But that's the one thing with essential oils. I mean, people say peppermint's good for it too, but I don't know, because lavender was the one that worked and I never wanted to change it. Because, you know, when you're a migraine sufferer, you're going to do whatever works and you're never going to change it once it works.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I learned about that. And if I was in the migraine, there was nothing I could do. I had to live through it. But if I could feel it, because you know when it's coming, you always know when it's coming, and it's like, where's the oil? And so that would be the one thing that I would recommend. I did Feverview tea back then as well, because, you know, that's really good for migraines. And that would, because sometimes I couldn't eat if I got into my stomach. So Feverview tea would help. If I was in it, I used that because I couldn't eat. So it depends on where you are in the migraine process. But to me, it was Feverview tea, and just go to bed with the lights out and hope Advil will do something, which it doesn't. Because I think I only took one pharmaceutical pill one time, and I was at work and I was in it for 3 solid days, and I couldn't deal with it. And I called my doctor. He said, "Will you please?" And he messengered a pill over to me, and I read, you know, all the instructions, all the things that are going to tell you could happen to you. And I thought, I am not taking this pill until I get home. And I took it like when I left, and it took me about an hour to get home because I was in Denver, lived in Longmont, and I took the bus home. I barely got home. Thank God I was really close to the bus station, because as soon as I got home, I passed out and just slept, because the pain was finally gone and that exhaustion finally took over. But that was the one and only time I ever took a pill, because I just don't believe in pharmaceuticals unless I'm in a life-threatening situation.
Yeah, I try not to take too many because I know it's rough on like the stomach and kidneys, and I've had kidney stones and I don't want to have any more. And once is enough there.
But I would definitely get lavender. I mean, it's a great product, especially if you can just smell it when you know it's coming on. Just because I carried a bottle with me all the time.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely take that on, because we do a lot of road trips and stuff. So sometimes, you know, it could come on and you could be in the middle of nowhere and it doesn't matter. You know, there's nowhere to even get medicine.
It doesn't care. When it wants to come, it comes.
Right. Well, from one medium in books to another in podcasts, you do a journey of an awakening spirit. What made you want to do that as well? Like, was there reception of the books, or was this pre-books? Like, what made you go down that path as well?
Well, when I first wrote the books, and Judith Briles probably had something to do about this, and she said, you know, you're very well spoken. You could probably do really good on a podcast. And so I started practicing in front of the camera, doing little short videos to like sell the products and various things. And I always knew I wanted to get in front of the camera because it didn't bother me to be in front of the camera. And an opportunity came. I had broken a bone in my hand, and Spirit kept saying, "You have to slow down." And I'm like, I'm not moving. How much slower? I might as well just be dead. And I'm fighting a depression, right, during this, because you can't do anything when you have a broken hand. And so what ended up happening is in February, about 2 years ago, I got this email that I would have totally ignored, because I would have just thought it was some scammer. And just the way it was written made me want to, like, I'm going to check this out, because it was about being on Bold Brave TV and doing a podcast weekly. And they would do all the work and I just had to show up. Well, it doesn't quite work quite like that, but you know what I mean.
If only, right? If only.
I learned that was just a total illusion. Anyway, so I talked to the producer and he says, people really, what you have to offer, people are looking, and he's trying to tell me this is all statistical. And I said, I'm going to tell you why this isn't a statistical decision. I said, first of all, there are people who have been doing this kind of talk and have bigger names than I will probably ever have, and you're not reaching them, but you found me. And what have I done? Little tip videos. I've done my books. I do blog posts. I said, I do very little social media, but a little. And I said, and you found me. This is not a coincidence, buddy. And this is not stats. This is something else drove this. And so I said, yes. And this has been a very challenging 2 years. I mean, it's one thing when I brought guests on because it made it a little easier, not a lot, but a little. But it was like, oh my God, I have to talk for an hour. Now that's not a problem. But it was like, what do I talk about today? What do I talk? And I was so nervous in the beginning because I wanted to but I was also myself and all the quirkiness. And I would look at my videos and work on getting clearer, try to be more refined in my speaking. That doesn't always happen when you got a guest and you're in a conversation mode. But I didn't want to be a 100% polished like the Oprah Winfrey's of the world. I wanted to still be me. And, I look at some of my videos and go, oh my God, I'm so quirky. And I realized this is what people like because it's who I am. It's just me having to get used to it. But yeah, that was part of it is I always wanted to do a podcast. I just didn't know how to do it and if I would be able to do it. And what I love the most about having a team doing this, that when the gremlins are fed the night before, and they do get fed, and there's a problem on the show, I just sit there and laugh at it. They're stressing out, trying to get everything up because I don't have to worry about it. I'm just like, we're on commercial break. And, usually it's when I have a guest on and we're laughing because she's a spiritual person or he's a spiritual person. And for some reason, Spirit's having a fantastic time with technology. That's how I always look at it. But the work that I have done to try to build the show and get followers and bring the message out and it's all starting to pay off now. I mean, I've had people say, oh my God, you're the real deal because how could you know this? It's like you're in my head talking to me. It's like what you talk about is what's in my head. And so there's that real genuine, authentic part of me coming out that's reaching people. It's just the YouTube thing, figuring out the YouTube algorithms. And I figured after 2 years, it should be further along, but I'm still working through YouTube. But you know what? Spotify is out there promoting. So, I mean, my downloads have increased exponentially and I'm just blown away of like, how can I start like really coming in more and better? So, and now I can see numbers. And when you see numbers, now you know what the audience wants. And it's like, okay, I'm going to change up the show a little bit because now I know what you actually want.
Yeah,
5 or 6 views doesn't help you.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting when we look at our statistics, where the viewers come from. That's something me and Sam talk about a lot. Obviously, we're in the US, so that's going to be the biggest. But then you start going second, third, and fourth, and you're like, wow, I wouldn't have even expected people over there to be watching. And also something you brought up was just the practicing. And I don't know about you, but we've been doing the YouTube for long enough now that we've re-uploaded some of our really old videos just because we're like, we'd like to have them back on the channel. And you watch those and you watch now and you're like, I didn't realize I had that much growth. Like, it's crazy how it happens.
Right. Oh yeah. Because I remember one day I was like, oh my God, I'm like really grounded in myself. I could actually see it on the camera. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm just hacking to my neighbor kind of thing, And to me, I think that is huge. Because I think there was a nervousness with me where I would talk maybe too fast or I'd be like, whatever I was doing. And now I'm just like, no, I'm comfortable.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It just comes on subtly. You don't even know it. And then you watch, like I said, we watch our old ones and we're like, wow, that's crazy how much. For our viewers, though, what can they expect on your podcast? Like, what are some of the topics? What are things you focus on? If they go over there, what can they expect?
Well, my show is about the journey of an awakening spirit, and I always talk about giving them tools for mindset, growth, spirituality. This one's going to be talking about the sides that people don't talk about on the awakening, the darkness, and how to overcome darkness, your own personal darkness. But I've always brought guests on, and they're all walks of life, all different kinds of people. And it doesn't matter if they had money or not have money, or if they were poor or not. They all had a story of an awakening experience. And that's what I cover. And I go deep into that part of their journey. I don't talk about anything that's too difficult. I mean, I'll make them go deeper, but if there's something that they're still going through, I'm not going to bring it up. I mean, I use my intuition. And I've brought on a neurologist a couple of weeks ago that talks more about that, and we're looking at bringing him on more regularly. I have an astrologer that comes on now regularly that I just decided, because I'm changing up the show a little bit. But I'm just really trying to find out what people wanted to talk about, and most of it is, I mean, you could see if somebody has lots of money but they're not happy because there's something else missing in their life, because we're driven for money, but it's not money. And people, how we still sabotage, and what are some of the things that they do. And there's just such a wide variety of people's experiences that I want that nobody can say, well, that's not me, because there's something on that show that is talking to you. And that is the whole purpose of the show, is that.
To help people, yeah.
Yeah. So they're not alone.
Mhm.
That I'm here, and I give them a link so they can come and talk to me for 15 minutes if they're struggling with something. I want them to not feel like they have to commit suicide and nobody's willing to listen. That's my goal, is for everybody to feel safe and that they can reach out. And they've actually started.
Yeah, and helping people, I think, is the most rewarding thing. You said people want, money or fame or fortune or whatever. But when we've helped people, I think that's when we felt the best.
Totally. I totally agree with that. It does something to my soul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it helps.
Mm-hmm.
I know Sam's struggling over there being my my co-host because I overtook him on the interview. I apologize, Sam. Any questions, or did I take the questions today?
I mean, I'm just kind of listening and observing. No, some of the questions I had were answered through conversation, so I'm definitely pretty good. And I look forward to looking more into your podcast, because I was listening to some of those and have started a journey in myself after my car accident. And so I'm just trying to figure it out, and have noticed some things, and I'm just like, that's interesting and weird. And just taking those steps back is always,
Well, and
it's
sometimes
nice,
when
but I
things
don't
like
do it
that
enough.
happen, it's because you weren't listening to the signs before. So spirit, the proverbial 8x16, that flattens you, because sometimes that's what we do to ourselves. I'm not saying that's what happened, but I mean, that's a big wake-up call.
Agreed. It definitely was.
Right, yeah. Life happens fast, as they say.
Yes, it does.
As a parent myself, I can tell you, life, I don't know where it went. Well, again, Kathleen, thank you for joining. Like I said, we'll definitely have to have you back on. We'll talk the movie, because I really enjoy that one. I've never heard it brought up anywhere else. I was so excited to hear you talking about it that one day. But for any of our viewers or listeners, where can they find more about you, your books, your podcast?
Well, the podcast is The Journey of an Awakening Spirit, and you can reach me at KathleenMFlanagan.com. And I do have a list of services and meditations and courses and self-guided things there. If you want to reach out and have a 15-minute call, there's a pop-up window that you can just go ahead and schedule that if you want to work with me, or just get some clarity on something that's going on in your life. My books are Dancing Souls. It's The Journey of an Awakening Spirit. It's The Call, The Dark Night of the Soul, and Awakened. And you can get them at Barnes & Noble's, KathleenMFlanagan.com, and Amazon.
Yeah, and at some point we'll definitely get around to doing a review on the channel because we do book reviews. And listen to yourself, because had I not just had the urge to go get coffee that day, we wouldn't have been here. So I'm glad I did. Though Sam would say it's probably my unhealthy urge to just go to any Barnes and Noble, but that's another conversation for another day.
Well, we were all pretty excited when you showed up too. So, I mean, you got all of us all riled up. So there's something about you that got us all excited.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you coming on, and like I said, we'll definitely have to have you back on at another time.
Well, I really appreciate being here, and I do appreciate the invite as well. So, we can reach out and maybe bring both of you guys on the show too and talk about your journeys.
Yeah, just let us
Because I
know.
love doing that.
So once again, Sam and I want to say thank you to Kathleen for joining us on this awesome episode of Culz Interviews. Make sure to go check out her show and her books. I got all the links in the description below. And until next time, guys, for more Culz Interviews, click that link to your left. For more about what we're doing here at Culz Paranormal, including a recent trip to the Rocky Mountain Dinosaur Resource Center, click that link to your right. And don't forget to hit that like and give us a subscribe. And let us know. What did you learn during this interview? Tell us in the comments below.